Hi, welcome to English 099, the Fundamentals of Composition. My name is Mr. Fontenot. I'll be your instructor for this course. In this course, I'm going to go through the steps in the writing process, get you ready to write paragraphs, and then finally we're going to write an essay. This course is basically divided into 3 sections. In the first part of the course, we're going to go through the steps in the writing process. We're actually going to learn step by step how to write a paragraph. Once we have those steps down, then we are going to talk about different rhetorical modes. And all a rhetorical mode is a style of writing. So think of like compare and contrast or argument, things you're probably already familiar with somewhat. So we'll take everything we learned about paragraph writing, apply it to these rhetorical modes, and then at the end we're going to take everything we've learned thus far about writing paragraphs and apply it to writing an essay. And that's where we'll end the course. In this first module, I'd like to kind of introduce you to the writing process. The question that I often get when we first start the course is exactly what is writing? What are we referring to when we talk about writing? Because there's all kinds of writing. But essentially, in this course, writing has 2 components. First, writing is making a point. If I ask you a question, what do you have to say about that question? What is the point that you want to make? And then after you make your point, the second part is, what is the specific evidence? What are the examples? What are the reasons that you can give to support that point? So that's writing in a nutshell. Now, why is paragraph writing in particular so important? That's what we're going to spend the bulk of this course talking about. So why do we do that? I have students who will ask me on the first day of class, why do I have to take this course? My job isn't going to require me to be a writer. I'm a culinary arts student, or I'm going for my welding certificate, or I'm going to work in a doctor's office, and I'm not going to be writing on a daily basis. So why do I have to do this? Well, you might be surprised at how often you are called upon to write, both in your academic career and in your job, sometimes in ways that you wouldn't expect. And I have some examples on the screen for you. First of all, while you're in college, you will have exam answers. Every class, every test that you take is not going to be a multiple choice test. Even outside of English classes, you may have test questions that call upon you to, where you are called upon to write a short essay or to write a paragraph in order to answer the question. You may have to write summaries. You may have to read and then summarize what you wrote, or write a response paper to what you've written. You may have to write a brief report, either at school or on the job. I have a friend who, at the end of every shift at his job, he has to write a discrepancy report, meaning everything that went wrong that day on the job. He has to write a detailed report explaining what happened. Well, if he doesn't do that, then if anything did go wrong, well, he would be the blame. So another time that we write more and more often at any job and at school is email. We all use email more and more. And so if you are trying to get a job, oftentimes the way you go about that is to send an email asking for an interview. Well, you want your email to sound professional and polished and well written. So those are very important. Paragraphs are also the building blocks of essays. So if you want to be able to write a good essay, first you need to be able to write good, solid paragraphs. So those are just a few of the reasons why paragraph writing is so important. Now, another thing that I often hear at the beginning of this course from students is that, oh, I'm not a good writer, or I'm a bad writer. When I was in high school, I was a terrible writer. And they think that this course is designed to teach you how to be a good writer. Well, I don't like that idea of good writer and bad writer, so just toss that out. I think of writing as a process, because writing is a process, and everyone can learn this process. Just like playing an instrument. If you've ever learned to play guitar, I played trumpet in high school. Or if you ever learned to cook, like if your grandmother taught you how to cook her lasagna, if you learned to play a sport, if your dad taught you how to play basketball. Every one of those is a process, and the first thing you do is you learn the steps in that process. And once you've learned the steps, then you practice, and you practice, and you practice, and you practice. And it's no different with writing. I've never met a student yet who could not learn this process. You just learn the steps and practice. So that's what we're going to do over the next few modules. So writing, like I said, is a process. There are 4 essential steps in the writing process, and that's what we're going to go through over the next few modules. I'm going to quickly go through those 4 steps right now. The first step is to make a clearly stated point. If I ask you a question, how are you going to answer that question? And usually the way that we discover this is through what we call pre-writing. And we're going to cover pre-writing in the next video. Once you have some ideas down on paper, you want to provide logical, detailed support for your point. This is usually why we use, or when we use specific evidence, specific examples, specific reasons for what we've written. Now, I'm using the word specific a lot, and that's because specific writing is interesting writing. If you're just making general observations without giving any specific detail, that usually doesn't answer the question, and it can often be boring. It's forgettable. So you want to use specific examples that only you can come up with, because that's what makes writing so interesting and so unique to a particular writer. The third thing you want to do, once you've got all these ideas down on paper, is you want to organize them and connect them. This is when we write an outline to put them in an order that's going to make sense. And this is when we add in transitional phrases to connect them. And at this point, we write a rough draft. We actually get something on paper that looks like a paragraph. But it's not a paragraph yet, because we have the final step, which is step 4, and that's to revise and edit. And we are not done until we have finished step 4. In step 4, we look at the content of our writing, and then we also make sure that our sentences are clear and error-free. So that's the writing process just in a nutshell. We're going to go through that in a lot more detail over the next few modules. So some things to remember throughout this course. One is to focus on the process. Don't skip the steps. There's a reason why in the next video I'm going to teach you about pre-writing. And then we're going to talk about, outlining and things like that. Don't learn all these steps, and then when it comes down to sit down and write, just throw all that out the window. There's a reason we teach this process the way that we teach it. It's because it works. The second thing is don't procrastinate. Whether it's in this course or outside of this course, when it comes to writing, don't put it off. Sometimes when there's a task that we just really don't want to do, the natural tendency is to procrastinate, to say, well, I'll just do it later. I'd rather do something more enjoyable right now. And we have all kinds of ways of rationalizing that. I'm guilty of it as well. But the thing is, if we don't give ourselves enough time to really work on our writing, then we're not going to be doing our best work. And we're also going to run out of time and not be able to revise and edit. And as I just said, that is such a crucial step in the writing process. And if you're just having to skip that step because you ran out of time, then your writing's going to suffer for it. The third and final thing to keep in mind throughout this course is to practice. Write every opportunity that you get. I'm going to give you exercises over the course of this class, and be sure and do them all. You can even do them multiple times. The more practice, the better your writing is going to get. Also read more. If you are already a reader, fantastic. Read even more, because reading helps you to recognize good writing when you see it. And you'll also see an improvement in your own writing just naturally as you read more. And that's it. So stick with it, and I'll see you in the next video.